When using text-to-text systems, how you prompt the system, or how you tell it what you want it to generate, is very impactful to your results. When writing your prompts, there's kind of two main ideas you want to keep in mind. First, it's essential to be very specific and very detailed in your prompt, in what you write into the system. The more specific and the more detailed you can be, the more context you give the system so that it can behave the way you want it to. Second, we'll have to keep in mind some of the idiosyncrasies of these programs. For instance, because they're based on probabilities and predictions using data collected up until a certain point in time, they're going to react in different ways if you ask questions about different points in time. You can even give commands or requests and immediately ask it to do the exact same thing over again. This is a way you'll see the variation in its prediction and its probabilities and its outputs. In terms of specificity, there are different ways you can think about that. In this video, we'll use an acronym coined by Lawton AI called CRAFT. CRAFT stands for context, role, action, format, and target. Again, there are other ways to think about it, but it's a nice acronym for starting out. There's also more complicated things that we can do. As I said before, we can say, try it again. We can also say, here's an example. An example is a very powerful way to teach the system about more complex behavior. We can even ask it to tell us how to create the prompt itself. I have an idea, but I'm not sure how to create a prompt. Tell me the prompt you'd like me to create to get my goal done. We can also ask it to evaluate the work it just did. It actually doesn't remember the work the way humans remember it because it's only predicting words, so it has a fresh view on evaluating it. And when there's lots of steps, it's very valuable to tell it to think step by step. And sometimes it's valuable in complex situations to tell it to take its time. Let's jump over to the computer and try out some prompts. I'm going to do this demo on ChatGPT, but remember, there are other systems out there, all with their own varying capabilities. In this example, we're going to ask ChatGPT to write us a summary, but we're going to give it a specific persona. We're going to say, you are a freshman in college, and you are going to write a 100-word essay summarizing the Enchiridion by Epictetus, a famous Stoic philosopher. Now, the idea of giving it a persona is to help focus in the relevant context and information out of all the millions and billions of documents that are informing this system. So here we see, written as a college freshman, he advocates for focusing solely on the former, suggesting that understanding and accepting this division, the division between what's in our control and not, is achievable through self-discipline, integrity, and personal growth. Now, let's see what happens when we give ChatGPT the persona of a philosophy professor. You can see here that we've changed the role or persona, but we've kept the context, the action, and the format all the same. Here we see the language is more sophisticated, as we would expect from a philosopher, talking about the seminal text, distilling the essence, and concluding with a discussion of life's vicissitudes. So you can see the system has adapted to the persona, but there's lots of other personas we can use as well. Write that for a 5th grader. This is the kind of prompt that people are using to communicate across different contexts. It can also work across different kinds of languages, such as rewrite that in Spanish. These systems were actually originally developed to translate from one human language to another human language. Now, remember, we have this chat interaction going on. It keeps track of what the last few things that have been said. Sometimes that keeping track is very large, sometimes somewhat small, depending on the specific system that you're using. I'm going to say, talk to me in English again. Now I'm going to say, evaluate that translation and tell me where it is good and bad and how to improve it. I asked it to talk to me in English again because sometimes when you ask it for the evaluation, the result might come back in Spanish, and I can't interpret the evaluation in Spanish that well. But here you see it's evaluation. How is this possible? Well, it turns out that these systems are actually trained by lots and lots of examples of humans saying, this is a good result, this is a bad result. And in fact, the evaluation is a process that many of these systems are quite good at. I want to start a new phase in my interaction with the system, so I'm going to tell it to forget all previous instructions. Now, we're going to have a little bit of fun with the personas. You are a pirate. You will only talk to me like a pirate. Are you ready? Explain the fundamental logic of introduction. You might not have a lot of need for pirate language in your work, but this illustrates the idea of how the system is combining different types of knowledge and different ways it understands the probabilities of how language is combined. Now, I use the word understand. I don't think there's any understanding going on in here. It's just statistical models doing probabilities. Now, it's in a pirate mode, so I'm going to need to take it out of the pirate mode. For our next demonstration, I want to show you a common activity for instructors right now, and that is getting help making syllabi. I'm going to say, please make me a syllabus for a 15-week course about generative AI for a liberal arts college. Use references, but do not make any references up. Ask me any questions you may have about the course. You are an experienced teacher for colleges and technical information. Because this activity is going to be complex, I'm going to tell it to think step by step and take its time. Creating a 15-week course on generative AI for a liberal arts college. Again, these systems know genres. They've seen millions of syllabi because syllabi are commonly on the internet. And it's going to combine that information with what it knows about generative AI. And here you can see it's starting to unfold. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is it might not be particularly the way we would teach a generative AI class for a liberal arts class. It looks like it's more oriented toward an engineering or technical audience, but that's okay. We can have the conversation. We can ask for more social cultural contextualization. We can talk about different kinds of ways that this can be evolved. This is just the first draft it comes with. And then we have the conversation back and forth to get the product to evolve in the direction we want. So what we saw today was that when we talk to these systems, we want to organize our language and our interaction for specificity and detail. We talked about using context and role or persona, being clear on the action and the format and the target audience. And we talked about a number of strategies to activate the features of the system, including asking it to try again, revising our prompt iteratively, asking for clarification, the back and forth between us and the system, even asking it for help on how to write the prompts. We also talked about self-evaluation, asking it to have step-by-step thinking, telling the system to take its time in complex situations, and giving examples to the system that are appropriate.